Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the dark side. I'm Sherry, and I'm so glad to have you here with me today. Real quick, I wanted to let you know that I am currently open to case suggestions. If you have a case you want me to cover, you can let me know by leaving a comment on YouTube, Spotify, or on Facebook. The only ones I'm not a big fan of talking about are the ones that have been covered a ton of times, like JonBenet Ramsey or Casey Anthony. Those cases have been covered really well by hundreds of podcasters, and I likely won't be able to add anything substantial. And don't just stop at true crime. You guys know I love ghosts and aliens and all kinds of other weird stuff, so please give me any suggestions you have. Plus, I just like hearing from you. Today we're talking about a young mom who went missing on Thanksgiving 2018 after picking up some last-minute items at the grocery store. It would take 10 days for her to be reported missing. Police have a suspect and will eventually get to the bottom of it. This case is solved. The details in this case were quite shocking, even to law enforcement who have dealt with these kinds of crimes. This truly showed how evil a human is capable of being. My sources are in the description area. This is episode 144, The Case of Kelsey Berreth. This case took place in 2018. Let's go back to what we were all doing in 2018. Bill Cosby, who was once one of America's favorite TV sitcom dads, was found guilty of aggravated indecent assault. Minnie Mouse received a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame for her 90th birthday. The big movies were Bohemian Rhapsody and Black Panther. Eggs were $1.50 a dozen. And in weird news from 2018, astronomers detected a mysterious repeating radio signal from space that pulsed every 18 minutes and 18 seconds, with the signal being observed for a period of 3 months before disappearing. Though its source is unknown, scientists suspect it was coming from a dead star. Kelsey Berreth was born September 15, 1989. She is 29 years old at the time of our story. She lives in Woodland Park, Colorado. Kelsey is described as sweet and kind and was an amazing mom to her 1-year-old daughter. Friends say everything she did with excellence. Kelsey grew up on a farm and was getting dirty from the time she was a little kid. She could drive a tractor from a young age. Kelsey took a big interest in these crop planes that used to fly over her farm. She thought they were the coolest thing ever and said when she grew up she wanted to be a pilot. And that's exactly what she did. Kelsey got her pilot's license. She got a job at an aviation school where she trained Air Force Academy graduates. It's crazy because Kelsey is this young, pretty, tiny woman, and she's a complete badass. A friend says Kelsey took her up in the air one day, and this friend was super nervous, but Kelsey was extremely safe and professional. So Kelsey's got this awesome job that she loves, and she really built a good life for herself. Her mom lived out of state. They did talk frequently, but they could go a week and not talk and it not be any cause for concern. Kelsey is looking for a cowboy. She wants to settle down and find someone special to share her life with that shared similar interests as her. Kelsey wasn't big on using social media. It wasn't really her thing. But in 2016, she made a profile on a dating app and matched with a man in Colorado, a 32-year-old farmer named Patrick Frazee. Patrick lives on his mother's 35-acre farm in Colorado where he trained cattle dogs. He also groomed donkeys, fed cows, and just basic farmhand work. He did go to college and get a degree, but wasn't cut out for office work. He liked being on the farm instead. Her and Patrick hit it off and they fell in love. Kelsey had lived in Washington State but moved to Colorado. He asked her to marry him, and she said yes, and shortly after, Kelsey learned she was pregnant. She gave birth to their daughter in October 2017. From all accounts, they appeared as this cute little happy family. Kelsey lived in a house with their daughter, but Patrick stayed behind at his mom's farm 20 minutes away. They took turns sharing parenting duties. They were still together, they just lived in separate houses. Now, it's no secret that Patrick's mother didn't like Kelsey. Even though she was Patrick's fiancé and the mother of her granddaughter, she just didn't like her. It seems no one would be good enough for her son. It would later come out some really awful things were said about Kelsey, including that she is a drug addict, she's unstable, a bad parent. None of these things were true, though. In fact, it was quite the opposite. Kelsey was a very stable person who owned her own home. She had 2 cars. She had a great job and education. She did have a 2-week stay recently at a place that was like a spiritual reset kind of place. Basically, a place you can go to relax and reset your life. But Patrick would later claim she was in rehab for drug abuse. But it wasn't a rehab, it was a spiritual meditation kind of place. She wasn't a drug user or a bad parent, just to clear that up, because a couple people would later say that she was. Again, she was not any of those things. Friends and coworkers say Kelsey loved being a mom and doted on her daughter 24/7. She was the center of Kelsey's world. Friends say Patrick and Kelsey seemed to get along most of the time, but Kelsey was feeling some kind of way because Patrick wasn't really pulling his weight of being the other parent. Kelsey was basically doing everything. On November 22nd, 2018, this is Thanksgiving morning, Kelsey spoke to her mom on the phone. They had a great chat, and Kelsey didn't hint that there was anything wrong. Patrick would later claim that Kelsey had broken up with him the day before, but she doesn't mention this to her mom on the phone. You'd think something like that would be important enough to tell her. Her mom said she seemed fine and everything was quite the opposite. She said she was getting ready to make a sweet potato casserole for Thanksgiving, but needed to run out to the grocery store and get some additional ingredients. Kelsey told her mom that she had made the baby cinnamon rolls, but she didn't like them and she wanted Cheerios instead. At 12:27 p.m., Kelsey is seen on surveillance walking into a Safeway. She's got her 1-year-old daughter bundled up in the shopping cart. This is the last time Kelsey would be seen alive publicly, which is so sad because she has no idea that these are her final hours. Her mom, who she talked to that morning, had no idea this would be the last time she spoke to her. Kelsey comes home from Safeway and Patrick comes to the house. He says it was to pick up the little girl. As a reminder, Kelsey is still engaged to Patrick. They are still a couple, but something happened that Thanksgiving Day after Patrick came over, and Kelsey is now missing. On December 2nd, 2018, this is 10 days since anyone has heard from Kelsey. Her mother realizes it's been over a week since she last spoke to her. She's unable to reach her when she calls. She calls Kelsey's brother, who also lives out of state, and he hasn't spoken to her either. She calls the flight school where Kelsey works, and her boss tells her that he heard from Kelsey on November 25th, 3 days after Thanksgiving. He says he got a text from Kelsey's phone that said she wasn't going to be in for a whole week since her grandmother was sick and she needed to go visit her. Her boss would later say it was very unlike Kelsey to miss work. As well, if she did need to take off for a week to visit Grandmom, Kelsey is the type to call in and explain the situation to her boss. For her to communicate something huge like this via text is definitely a red flag. He also said the text didn't give Kelsey vibes. You know how you just know someone by the way they type? Well, this one seemed different. So Mom knows that something is very wrong now. She knows there's no sick grandmom that Kelsey is visiting. As a last resort, she calls Patrick. Patrick tells her he saw her on Thanksgiving afternoon. He says she broke up with him and he came and picked the little girl up. He also returned some items to her, and then he left and went and had dinner with his family. It's been 10 days and no one has heard from her since. Well, this is strange because number one, he has their daughter. Kelsey isn't going to say, "We're done, here's the baby, bye." As well, after a breakup, when you are engaged and you have a child together, most don't just cease communication. You have to slowly work your way out of each other's lives. And also, Kelsey's mom said Kelsey never said, "I'm breaking up with Patrick" later when she spoke to her on the phone that morning. In fact, she said she was making him sweet potato casserole. Most women aren't going to make their partner a homemade casserole the day they break up with him. Patrick thinks maybe Kelsey picked up an airplane and flew off somewhere, which is extremely unlikely. Kelsey's mother calls the police and explains the situation. She says, "Look, I live hours away. Can you go to her house and do a welfare check?" Police do a quick walkthrough and see that all of Kelsey's belongings are still there, including both of her cars. Nothing screams out that this is a crime scene. There's no blood everywhere and overturned furniture. There's no evidence of a break-in. They find a Safeway receipt from November 22nd. So they leave and they determine that this is a missing person case. The Colorado Bureau of Investigations is now involved. They are also known as the CBI. They bring in cadaver dogs and do some looking around. The dog alerted near one of Kelsey's cars, but that's it. There's nothing on the surface that seems to be a crime scene. Meanwhile, Kelsey's mom and brother make their way to Colorado to do their own investigation. They are going to stay at Kelsey's house while they figure out where she could be. When they go inside, they notice the house was very clean, but in a weird kind of way. Like everything looked meticulous and clean, but there was a broom on Kelsey's bed. They found a plate of cinnamon rolls sitting on the counter. Remember, she had made cinnamon rolls on Thanksgiving morning, so they've been sitting there for 2 weeks. Her mom said they were rock hard. The trash can was in a different place than it usually was. Something just wasn't right. All of Kelsey's belongings, such as her toothbrush, her suitcases, her makeup, everything is there. So if she was to suddenly leave, she didn't take anything with her, including her car. But there is one item missing, which is her cell phone. This is big news in Colorado. Local TV stations began reporting on this missing young, beautiful mom. Cheryl, Kelsey's mother, told reporters, quote, "She's not the kind that runs off. This is completely out of character. Kelsey loves her God, she loves her family and friends, and she loves her job. Kelsey, we just want you to come home. Call us if you can. We won't quit looking." During their stay at Kelsey's house, her brother finds something that police had missed. On the bottom of the toilet, he found a blood streak. This isn't good. They're hoping it was just a coincidence and that something bad didn't happen to Kelsey, but the situation is getting darker and darker. They alert the CBI about this blood streak, and they arrive with a whole crime scene investigation team. They've got their kits, and they're going to tear this house apart now, including pulling up floorboards. They did find 2 DNA profiles. One belonged to a male who they could not identify. This could be from anything, though. It could be the mailman's DNA got on her mail. It could be from a friend of Kelsey's who stopped by. It doesn't necessarily mean it was a killer's DNA. The other DNA profile belonged to a female. It was from blood in the wooden flooring. This sounds bad, but it ends up being a pretty innocent explanation. The blood ended up being from the previous tenant of the home. She was in the process of moving out in the days before Kelsey moved in. She had cut her hand pretty bad and was moving boxes in and out of the house. She's allergic to Band-Aid adhesive, so she just let it drip all over the floor. It dripped deep into the floorboards, and it wasn't sealed because the lady was also allergic to laminate. So even though the floor had been meticulously clean, the blood was still in there. That's pretty wild, and I'm glad the woman was able to clear that up. So when they get to the bathroom, they see the blood streak on the bottom of the toilet that Kelsey's brother had found. They have to do a DNA test to see if it's Kelsey's blood or someone else's. They also get out luminol, which will show if there was any other blood around that had been cleaned up. So this bathroom looks clean and shiny. The only thing odd was the blood streak on the toilet and the bathroom rug is missing. But luminol is a miracle product which can show a whole different picture. So they use it along with their black lights, and what it showed was shocking. This bathroom lit up like Christmas lights. There was blood all over the shower, the ceiling, the back of the doors, the walls. It's everywhere. This amount of blood loss would for sure be enough for someone to die from. The blood is tested and it is a match to Kelsey. This missing persons case just quickly became a homicide investigation. Police really want to talk to Patrick, her fiancé, since he was the last person to see her. Kelsey's been missing for 2 weeks. He gives them the same story he had given Kelsey's mom. He came to her house, grabbed the baby, gave her some of her belongings, and left. He hasn't heard from her since. Maybe she got in one of her airplanes and left. Maybe she's in rehab. He explained she was in air quotes rehab before, but she wasn't in rehab. She was in a spiritual counseling place getting help with fatigue and nutrition. Patrick does hand over his phone to police so they can download everything on it. I've seen these phone downloads. They're pretty impressive. Basically, everything on your phone is uploaded to a computer and they can see everything you've been doing. Now, I say Patrick gave his phone over to police, but I'm not going to give him a round of applause for this because the police told him they would come back with a warrant. It was one of those things like, you can give it to us now, or we can bring back this piece of paper in an hour that will make you give it to us. So he hands it over. Police found that Patrick was lying. He said he hadn't heard from Kelsey since Thanksgiving afternoon, but his cell phone data, which doesn't lie, showed a ton of text messages between his phone and hers. Mostly sad stuff like breakup stuff, do you even love me? That kind of thing. But the strange part is that the phones were together when these text messages were being sent. Everywhere one phone went, the other one was right there. So were they sitting next to each other, texting back and forth about breaking up, or was the same person in possession of both phones, sending them to each other to create a timeline? Does Patrick need to create a trail of evidence? Patrick's brother says that when Patrick showed up for Thanksgiving dinner that day, he arrived 2 hours late. It's important to note that Patrick's brother is a police officer. He says Patrick came in with the baby and told everyone Kelsey wouldn't be attending, but there was an unexpected dinner guest, which was Kelsey's cell phone. Her phone attended the dinner because cell phone data showed it was at Patrick's mother's ranch. Now they've got Patrick in a lie. According to Denver 7 News, they've also uncovered that Patrick's cell phone was at Kelsey's condo from 1 p.m. to 4:30 p.m. This wasn't just a quick exchange of the baby meeting. He was there for hours. Eventually, the two phones separate, and Kelsey's phone is now in Idaho, over 800 miles away. Patrick's phone also made over 40 calls to another phone number in the days after Kelsey's disappearance. The calls were going to a 208 area code. Do you want to guess where that 208 area code is? If you guessed Idaho, you'd be correct. Patrick made over 40 calls to a woman in Idaho named Crystal Lee Kenny. Crystal lives where Kelsey's cell phone is pinging. I know this is messy, and I'm sorry. So, who is Crystal Kenny? She is a mom of 2 children. She is recently divorced, but her husband and her still lived in the same house, so they could both care for the children. They just slept in separate bedrooms, whatever you got to do, I guess. Crystal is known as having the Magic Valley's highly coveted title of Rodeo Queen. Crystal was all about horses. They are her life. She is also a registered nurse. She works in pre-op. She's the nurse that helps get you ready for surgery. So how is this woman connected to Patrick, and why is Kelsey's phone near her? They meet with Crystal and ask her if she knows Kelsey Berreth, and she says, oh, that's that girl in the news who's been missing. No, I don't know her. They ask her about Patrick, and she's like, who's Patrick? I don't know a Patrick Frazee. They're like, come on, Crystal, we're not idiots here. And she says, fine, I know him, but we were never together. We just own a horse together. Then she changes it up to, well, we used to date. Police have someone they can talk to that will clear all of this up, and that's Crystal's ex-husband. He lives with her, and he spilled all the tea. He says Crystal and Patrick used to date after college, then they broke up. But they have been having an affair for a long time. Even though Crystal was no longer married, Patrick was engaged to Kelsey, but cheating on her with Crystal. He basically outs her to the police, and good for him for doing so. He tells them that on December 4th, Crystal asked him to take her to get a new cell phone since she lost hers, which happens to be the same day that Patrick handed his phone over to the police. Crystal says the last time she saw Patrick was on November 24th when she spent the whole day at his ranch, but she claims she was only there because of the horse. Then she drove all the way back to her home in Idaho. But it doesn't make sense because the day that Crystal claims she was at Patrick's ranch all day with him, there was a bunch of phone calls between the two of them, but they were supposed to be together the whole time. But a huge discrepancy here is that Crystal's phone was pinging off of a tower next to Kelsey's home and not the tower where Patrick's ranch is. Police have a search warrant for Patrick's ranch, which is 35 acres. They don't find anything tied to Kelsey's disappearance, and most importantly, they don't find a body. The only thing of any importance that they found was a piece of paper which Patrick had written a list of names of people who could provide medical care for his daughter if he wasn't around. He listed a few people, but one name that wasn't on the list was Kelsey, which, being the little girl's mom, you would think she would be number one. The FBI receives a tip from one of Crystal's friends. This friend has some major info that is crucial to this case. She tells them Crystal had called her all upset about a month before Kelsey disappeared. She calls her friend crying and saying that Patrick had asked her to take out his child's mother. She told her friend that Patrick said Kelsey was an unfit mother and had been abusing their 1-year-old daughter, which is so far from the truth, but Crystal says he wants me to kill her. This friend told Crystal that she needed to take this info to the police, but Crystal never did. I want to be mad at this friend for not going to the police herself, but she trusted Crystal to do the right thing. She thought she was going to go to the police herself, but it wasn't until the girl saw that Kelsey was missing and says, oh shit, she really did it. Crystal ends up retaining a lawyer and they agree to talk to the police. She's going to tell them everything with her lawyer sitting right there, but she only agrees to do this if they strike a deal with her. And I'll get into more about this deal later. But basically, she would only be charged with evidence tampering and nothing else. Crystal deserves much more than this, but they had to do what they had to do in order to get info on Patrick. The prosecutor in this case says it was like making a deal with the devil. Crystal would state that she cooperated with investigators because she wanted to help Kelsey's family, blah, 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 but she got a heck of a deal, so she probably wanted that deal too. She told the investigators in a 4-hour interview that Patrick first came to her in September 2018. He asked her to help get rid of Kelsey. He told her Kelsey was abusing their daughter and hit her with an iron, which again is not true. Police did look into these claims, though, in an effort to be unbiased, but they found no evidence of any abuse. In fact, all evidence showed Kelsey was a great mom. Patrick tells Crystal, "You're a nurse. Get some strong narcotics and poison her coffee." They came up with a plan that Crystal would make the 10-hour drive to Colorado. She would pick up a caramel macchiato from Starbucks, which is Kelsey's favorite coffee drink, and take it to her house. Crystal claims she had a change of heart and didn't put the Ambien and Vicodin in the drink, but she knocked on Kelsey's door. Kelsey opens it and Crystal tells her, "Hi, I'm new to the neighborhood. I heard you helped get my dogs back when they got loose the other day, and I wanted to thank you, so I brought you a drink from Starbucks." Kelsey told her thanks and is very polite to her, but she says, "I didn't help get your dogs back. I don't know what you're talking about." And Crystal just tells her, "Okay, well, just take the drink anyway," and then she left. Kelsey likely poured it down the sink when she went back inside. I don't know if I'd be able to accept a free drink, even a, Starbucks caramel macchiato, which sounds wonderful. But from a stranger, I don't know. Unless I saw it being made, I think I'd probably get rid of it. Crystal tells Patrick she couldn't go along with it, and Patrick is angry with her now. So Patrick says, okay, plan B. He gives Crystal a metal pipe. He tells her to wait outside Kelsey's house, and when she comes outside, smack her in the back of the head with it. Crystal takes the pipe, but she doesn't go through with it. Instead, she puts the pipe in her car and drives all the way back to Idaho. Crystal decides to try again. She drives back to Colorado, and this time Patrick gives her a baseball bat. But she backed out again. She drives back to Idaho. Keep in mind, all of these trips are 10 to 12 hours each way. Crystal had 800 miles each way to think about this. She could have picked up her phone while she was driving and called police and said, "My ex-lover Patrick is asking me to kill his fiancé." But she didn't. She just went along with it. Crystal says that on Thanksgiving, Patrick called her and said, "You need to come back. You've got a mess to clean up here." Crystal now knows that Patrick got tired of waiting and just did it himself. Now he wants her to come clean up the mess. He tells her she will likely find a tooth somewhere in the house. Make sure she grabs it. Crystal waited a day or two since it's Thanksgiving and she couldn't just bolt out of her family dinner. She borrowed a car from a friend. The girl said her and Crystal sometimes switched vehicles because Crystal had a truck, and if she needed to move something, she would just borrow Crystal's truck. So Crystal asked to borrow this car, which makes me wonder if she told her, by the way, I'll be putting 20 hours round trip on your car. I hope you don't mind. Investigators learned that Crystal loaded her car up with cleaning supplies, garbage bags, a hairnet, shoe covers, and other protective equipment, and made the long trek to Colorado. Her reason is because she's scared of Patrick. Crystal has kids, and she says she was afraid he might do something to one of them. But Patrick lives states away. It's not like he's right there threatening her. She gets the keys from Patrick to Kelsey's condo. She walks in and sees blood everywhere, all over everything, the electronics, the baby toys. It's like a bloodbath in there. She doesn't see Kelsey's body anywhere, so she knows Patrick must have gotten rid of it. Crystal gets to work cleaning every square inch of that house. She claims she left a small amount of blood evidence, so investigators would later find it. As a side note, the investigators later went to the house with Crystal, and she pointed to the spots where she left blood evidence. It was on some stones on the fireplace and on a baby gate. Crystal did find the tooth that Patrick told her she would find. He actually had knocked out 4 or 5 teeth, but he couldn't locate one of them. She washed the curtains and bedding and put them back in the house. She filled several garbage bags full of bloody evidence that she wasn't able to get clean, and she put it in her car, and then she drove over to Patrick's ranch. Crystal wants to know how Patrick killed her, and he tells her what happened. Remember, this murder took place on Thanksgiving Day. Kelsey was very much in love with Patrick. She was not breaking up with him. He says he got to Kelsey's condo on Thanksgiving. They hung out, and he tells her, let's play a game. He says, I'm going to blindfold you and light some candles. You have to smell each one and try to guess the scent. Kelsey thought this would be fun. She happily agreed, and she puts on a blindfold. Patrick holds out a candle under her nose, and she guesses the scent. He tells her, all right, now let's do another one. Instead of grabbing another candle, he grabs a baseball bat and beats her in the head with it. He is striking her with the bat while she's blindfolded. One of the blows knocked out her teeth. Patrick beat Kelsey until she died. The whole time, the baby was in the next room in a playpen. Patrick said Kelsey said 2 words before she died. They were, please stop. He places Kelsey's body in a black tote and loads it into his truck and takes it to a different ranch that he was allowed on. Not his own ranch, but another one he was allowed to use. He stored her body in a barn. Video evidence from the surrounding businesses showed Patrick driving down the highway with a large black tote in the back of his truck that day. He wanted Crystal to take the body back to Idaho with her, but she said no. So he and Crystal drove out to the ranch where it was and brought the body back to his ranch, where they put it in a horse trough, along with the trash bags full of bloody evidence from Kelsey's home. Crystal and Patrick are seen on a gas station surveillance camera filling a can of gas. Crystal gathered wood and tossed it into the trough. They poured gasoline on top of everything, and he and Crystal watched it burn. They placed pieces of metal over top of the trough so the fire would burn, but the flames wouldn't get too high and people would notice. According to video obtained by the Daily Mail, Crystal told investigators that while they were burning the body, Patrick's mother was on the porch watching them and didn't say a word. It's also been reported that a woman named Sheila Frazee posted on social media, "Yay, the witch is dead." However, investigators learned that it was not Patrick's mother who posted this. It was someone with the same name, and it was, quote, just a coincidence. Kelsey is gone. We don't know what he did with the bones and whatever else was left after the fire went out. The only thing left in the burn pit was a single tooth. Kelsey's remains have never been located, but it's believed he buried them somewhere or put them in a body of water. They did find her DNA all over this trough, and there was definitely a large fire there at some point. He tells Crystal to take Kelsey's phone back to Idaho with her and dispose of it. He tells her to send text messages to her boss, pretending like she was going to be out for a week visiting a sick relative. That is all the evidence investigators needed, and they made their way to Patrick's ranch and placed him under arrest for the murder of Kelsey Berreth. Emergency custody of the little girl was given to Kelsey's mother, which I'm so thankful for. Going to a trial without a body is always hard, but with Crystal's testimony and all this cell phone evidence and the blood evidence found in the house, prosecutors should be able to convince a jury. Crystal is the star witness for the prosecution. She gave a compelling testimony. I'm glad she told the truth on the stand and apologized to Kelsey's family. I still hate this woman, though, don't get me wrong. She was given 3 years for evidence tampering, but only ended up serving 18 months in prison, which is far too short. Crystal could have stopped this from happening. She had knowledge that this was going to happen, but didn't do anything to prevent it. We get that she was still in love with Patrick, but going as far as to murder someone for him is crazy. Patrick pled not guilty, but after just hours of the jury deliberating, he was found guilty of murder and 3 counts of solicitation of murder. He was sentenced to life in prison plus 156 years. Patrick's family and friends were shocked that he was capable of doing something like this. He had no criminal history or any history of violence. But the most frustrating thing was the motive. What was the motive? I've sat and thought about this for a while, trying to come up with a reason for why Patrick would want Kelsey dead. She loved him. She wasn't planning on breaking up with him. Even if she was, most people won't kill the other person. They just move on. He obviously had this dark side hidden away that no one could see. Although people had seen snippets of this dark side emerge before, though. When Kelsey gave birth to her daughter, the baby was a few weeks premature, but otherwise healthy. As a precaution, the baby was placed in an incubator, which happens a lot of times. Patrick began yelling at the nursing staff because the baby had to be taken away from them to be placed in the incubator. The nurses had to call security to come over. They also called social services to talk to Kelsey to ensure she wasn't being physically abused. She assures them that she wasn't and didn't know why Patrick went off on everyone the way he did. Some say Patrick was emotionally abusive to others at times. During the trial, Kelsey's family had temporary emergency custody of the little girl. Her mother applied for full-time permanent custody, but a motion was filed by Patrick's family since they wanted custody of her, but the judge awarded full custody to Kelsey's family instead. Kelsey had a good head on her shoulders. She was smart. She had a home, a car, a good job. She was a great mom. What more could she provide to this guy? Why would he want her dead? I read an article on ABC News that said Kelsey's parents sued Patrick in civil court for their daughter's death, and the complaint filed said that Patrick wanted full custody of their daughter and Kelsey wouldn't agree to it. So that could possibly be the motive. He could have taken her to court and fought for full custody like everyone else would do. He has that right. But instead he decided to kill her, but not before begging his ex-lover to do it for him. Now he'll be in prison for the rest of his life. Crystal was released from prison in 2021. This was truly a brutal murder. Kelsey is remembered fondly by family and friends. She was a talented pilot, a good mom, a good friend, and a neighbor. She is missed every day by those who knew her. Rest in peace to Kelsey Berreth. That's it for this week, and I'll see you all again soon. Take care, and much love to you all.